Dave in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Hey, Dave, it says here you want to disagree with me about something. What's up?
Oh, yeah. Hey, I appreciate you taking my call. Thank you. I was calling in. I guess I'd maybe consider myself somewhat conservative, although I've voted for Mickey Mouse in the last two presidential elections. I do agree with you on a lot of points. Steve King's an idiot. Donald Trump is definitely a buffoon. He probably at least needs to lay off of Twitter. The Mark Levin show, I can't stand to listen to it. But where I was going to disagree with you on the global warming thing, I do agree in global warming as to how much we contribute to it. I definitely think that it's a factor. Where I think that the big disagreement between conservatives and and I guess progressives, you might say, is the Green New Deal is, at least from a pragmatic sense, pretty stupid. And also disagree with the studies that say that there are 12 years left on Earth. I think that those studies have been blown way out of proportion.
Well, they don't say there's 12 years left on Earth. They say there's 12 years left before we put so much CO2 into the atmosphere that no matter what we do, we can't stop about a 6 or 8 degree increase in temperature, which will wipe out the ability of most humans to live on this planet.
Right. And
so you disagree with that science. I'm assuming that that's a faith-based disagreement, that you're not actually a scientist.
Well, I'm an engineer, but you can take that for what it's worth.
Yeah.
But no, I disagree with how much that study's been blown out of proportion. But what I mainly called in to say was, let's assume that we take all the actions in this Green New Deal, which I don't think is possible. But let's say that it happened. The United States is not even the largest contributor to CO2 emissions. I guess, my question is, what do you do about China?
China is building solar at a rate more than 400 times faster than any other country in the world right now. They're building out wind power. I forget the percentage for wind power, but it's massive. It's even higher than that. China is going green as fast as they can. China is subsidizing their electric car industry. There are places in China where it's no longer legal to even sell internal combustion engines. They've done the same thing that Norway has done. It's illegal now to sell. You cannot buy a gasoline or diesel-powered car in Norway anymore. It has to be an electric car, period. End of discussion. Parts of China have already done that, and the rest of China is soon behind. China is moving really, really fast to decarbonize. Now, that said, the reason why it's so important to look at the United States is we are 4.5% of the world's population. China's, with over, 1.3 billion out of 7 billion. So that would make them, a little less than 20% of the world's population, like 16% of the world's population. We're about equal in our carbon emissions right now, but as 4% of the world's population, we are responsible for 25% of the world's carbon dioxide since the Industrial Revolution. And therefore, any action we take in this country has a huge multiplier effect. The individual people changing their lifestyle, not because it's imposed upon us. I mean, if the Green New Deal was, and first of all, the details of it still have to be worked out, right? It's just a statement of principles, Dave. But if, for example, we were going to do like Germany did and say, we're going to put solar panels on at least a third of the houses in the country, and we're going to do it in a way that doesn't cost the homeowners a penny, and that doesn't cost the utilities a penny, and that is going to and Germany last summer, they had a couple of days there last summer where they produced more than 100% of the electricity that the country needed. They were exporting electricity to France. And because of this program that they put together, it was supposed to be originally a 10-year program. It was called the 100,000 Rooftops Program. I gave a speech like 15 years ago in Barcelona, Spain, with the German legislator who was the author of this. His name was Schmidt. And we keynoted a conference there in Barcelona. And the deal was they knew that they needed to build 2 new nuclear power plants in order to get enough electricity for the demand that they knew was coming in the next 2 decades. And there was this strong, and this was after Chernobyl, there was this strong opposition in Germany to nuclear power. And so the program that Schmidt came up with is he said, okay, what's it going to cost to build these 2 nuclear power plants? It's going to cost the equivalent of everybody, or about a third of the people in Germany, spending roughly 7 times what they're spending on electricity for a 10-year period. In other words, we know what the costs are, right? Like the ones that they're building in North Carolina right now, they're like $13 billion. They're going to cost those ratepayers, a couple $100 a month for the next 30 years. So we know what the costs are. So he said, okay, here's what it's going to cost to build these 2 nuclear power plants. And we know what it costs to put solar panels on a house. And so, what we're going to do is we're going to go to the banks and say any homeowner who qualifies as a homeowner for an added mortgage, an additional mortgage, to say $10,000 for solar panels on their house, you're going to give them a loan, but it's only going to be at 2% because we're going to subsidize it. There's no possibility of losses. This is going to be pure profit for the banks. We, as the government, will backstop it. There's going to be a very low default rate anyway. You're talking about homeowners. So people put the solar panels on their houses. It sparked a huge industry in Germany. I mean, hundreds of thousands of people got jobs putting these solar panels on. New factories are built making these solar panels, making the frames, transporting them around the country, number one. Number two, over the 10-year period that you have that mortgage, that second mortgage on your house, the electric company, which was going to build the nuclear power plant, has to buy electricity from you at 700% of retail. So if you're buying electricity right now at 10 cents a kilowatt hour, you're selling electricity to the power company at 70 cents a kilowatt hour. And what they calculated was that's enough that at the end of the year, you have made enough money selling solar power to the power company to pay for that year's mortgage on your solar panels. So it costs you nothing for the 10 years that you owe the money to the bank. And it costs the utility the exact same cost as building 2 nuclear power plants for the 10 years that they're having to pay you 7 times what the retail cost of electricity is. At the end of that period of time, nobody's paying anything, right? The power company goes back to buying electricity. You're paying 10 cents a kilowatt hour. You're selling it for 10 cents a kilowatt hour. The banks have been fully paid off. Everybody's good. And if you go to Germany, and as I do several times a year, and take the train like from Frankfurt to Steinach, you do 4 hours east to west across the country and look north, so you're looking at the southern slopes of the hills and things, at least a third of the houses are covered with solar panels. And it costs nobody anything. That's a Green New Deal, Dave. What's wrong with that?
Well, I don't want to get off on a tangent, but I will say...
this is not a tangent. I'm giving you a specific. And this is one of the things that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has cited. She said, Germany figured out how to do this. They had to, by the way, they had to stop the program 2 years ago. There was all this celebration. The Fox News, Germany's electric program is, they're putting it on hold. They had to stop it because the homes were generating so much electricity that the old power grid couldn't handle it, and they have to build out a whole new smart grid. But they've got plenty of money to do that with because they got free electricity from the sun.
All right. Well, right. I'll start from practically. I guess all I would say to that is I have done cost-benefit analysis for some clients on solar in some projects that we do, and at this point, at least in our area, I'm from Alabama, that it's not. Not cost beneficial.
It's more than competitive, Dave.
In many applications, not possibly for home. But as far as nobody pays for it, you just said that the government would subsidize the loan, so we would all pay for it.
Well, if somebody defaults, but the actual cost at the end of 10 years was pretty much zero. It was negligible.
Okay, right. I guess what I'm saying is with the extremities in the Green New Deal, and I understand that it's just an overall plan. I think when we start citing the extremities, I think
for example,
it's very difficult.
What do you think is extreme in there?
We're talking about rebuilding all the buildings over 10 years.
Well, not rebuilding. I mean, you're not going to tear them down and rebuild them. You're going to go in and insulate buildings that can be insulated, and all new buildings. In California right now, if you're going to build a new house, it has to have solar on its roof. It's a law.
And zero carbon emissions. I mean, we are a long way away from that.
I think we could do it in a decade if we threw into it what we threw into recovering from World War II and the Great Depression.
My car is a 2002, so if you think about in 10 years, so every car is not going to be operational.
You're absolutely right, Dave. In fact, the average replacement time is 17 years in the United States.
So practically, that's
average lifetime
difficult in and of itself. I guess what I'm saying is when the average person, not even just the average conservative, but I think the Democratic Party is due for a split almost, because I think we're going to have Republicans, Democrats, and progressives, because of the extremities that are pointing out, even though it's just a plan, and I understand that, to the average person, it comes off as is ridiculous.
Well, and you make a good point there, Dave. I mean, you've got moderates in the Democratic Party. Beto O'Rourke, I guess, yesterday came out and said he wasn't in favor of the Green New Deal, and he's not in favor of Medicare for all. Who, and then you've got other people like Kirsten Gillibrand, who used to be a conservative, in fact, used to be a Republican, is now embracing both. Right. So people are taking their positions in the Democratic Party. But at least in the Democratic Party, Dave, we're having a debate. In the Republican Party, it's you must bend down and kiss Donald Trump's ass or you are toast. Just ask Lindsey Graham.
I can agree with that. Yeah, I can agree with that. I've been frustrated. A lot of conservatives are slow to criticize Donald Trump, even on the ridiculous stuff. Like the North Korea. I mean, he got embarrassed, and then nobody wants to say anything about it. No, I agree that he's made mistakes. I'm not even talking about Donald Trump. I'm just saying that in the progressive party, I feel like they're moving so left, particularly on these environmental issues, that you might be due a split with.
I think that split is happening, but I think it's happening because you've got some Democrats who still want to be taking money from billionaires and from industry, and you've got other Democrats who are saying enough already. I mean, if you survey the American people, Dave, you're going to find more than 70–80% of the American people want a clean environment. They would love to get off fossil fuels. They would love to make sure this Medicare and Social Security are strong and solvent, and they don't care if you want to call it socialism. They want their schools to be well funded. These are not radical policies. These are the middle of America policies. And when progressives like Bernie and Elizabeth come out and say these things, and everybody goes, oh, you can't move too far to the left, like they do on the morning on MSNBC, it's like, this is crazy.